It's Friday. Things
It's
happen.
it's Friday. Indeed, it is
It
Friday.
is Friday. I like that. I like that. Now,
It's
because I didn't
acting
get a
like
chance.
a Monday right now, but it is Friday nonetheless.
Nonetheless, is it Buchman or Buchman?
It's actually Bookman, which is fine. No
Bookman.
one ever gets it right since I was in elementary school.
That is funny because as someone whose last name everyone ever, if they ever read it, thinks it's Bray, I
Uh-huh.
totally feel you, man, because
Yeah,
it's Bry.
there you go. Well, it's nice
Well,
to meet you, Kristen Bry.
nice to meet you as well, Damian Buchman.
Uh-huh.
So we were just talking, we were buying a little time, but I am so excited when I read about this. I think the first time I read about the park is in the WPR article,
Okay.
but we were just saying. So this is like 5 years in progress.
It is at least in my brain. It's been
Okay.
5 years in the making. Publicly, it's been 3-4 years, and by the time we're done, as far as the community knows, it'll have been 5 years before this first Universal Park was developed and made real.
So tell us more about. So we were kind of saying before, you noticed the lack of. While there were some parks that had accessible features, there
Right?
was no fully accessible park. And so
Yeah.
what is the Moss Universal Park in Wauwatosa gonna look like when it's all done?
Yeah, so it's exactly what it says. It's a universal park, which means the whole park, the entirety of its 18 acres are for everybody, physically disabled, intellectually disabled, not disabled at all, elderly, young, middle-aged like myself, something for everybody. And so what we always say is what we often see is we'll see it like an inclusive playground, right? And those inclusive playgrounds, which are great, don't get me wrong, we applaud everybody who's taken that first step. They're fantastic, but they stop at the playground, and every playground is built in a park. So our argument has been, why are we limiting people from leaving the playground? Why are we saying this is your only space? And one of the most important things that I think we've all really glossed over and forgotten is, what about the dad with a disability who wants to play with their kids? And every parent, at least when I ask them, what's your most important job? At least what I say all the time, and they usually agree, is to keep my kids safe, right? To keep them protected.
Yeah.
And if I can't get to them if they're injured on the top of the playground, or if they escape the inclusive playground into the park and I can't get to them in the woods, I can't keep them safe. So now my able-bodied kids aren't coming with me to the park until their able-bodied mom, or caretaker or someone else is available so we can all go. So,
and that is, this is the thing that I always is like when it comes to able-bodied being disabled, like different limitations, like just the things that as an able-bodied person you don't think about.
Right.
Because I was thinking about it even when I read about this as the point from a kid's perspective of what can they play on, what can they not. And I hadn't even thought about it as a parent of being able to like not only just keep eyes, but like you see your kid at the top, they're about to go down the slide and something happens, you're not getting up there.
That's right. That's right.
And so it broke ground last month, but what does it take? Have you built a park before? Like how did you, like where, when you kind of looked around the landscape, you're like, well, we need this. Where does one even start to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I actually found myself got connected to a company called Game Time. They built a playground in Hart Park in Wauwatosa that was accessible. And I was ready to go down there. This was like 2012. I had my son strapped to me. Sometimes I use a wheelchair for long distance, and mostly I'm ambulatory. So, I brought my little baby son down with my wheelchair, expecting not to really be able to execute and use this playground. Turned out I could get all the way to the top. I was really impressed, immediately built a relationship with Game Time. Fast forward 6-7 years later, and I said to them, it's time to build a universal park. Gave them a call. They spoke my language. They started talking about inclusivity is not just about the child with a disability, but what about grandparents? What about parents? What about everybody who wants to play? We say everybody should be able to play from K to grade, kindergarten to senior. If the park is your jam when you're 8, the park should still be able to continue to be your jam in your 80s, and you can play with your grandkids, right? And so that's really where it came from for me, was looking at this thing, also playing wheelchair basketball on a team with my teammates, some of whom are all, full-time wheelchair users and have started to grow families. And I'm like, they deserve to play with their kids like I deserve to play with my kids, and their kids deserve to play with them. They should be able to look back and say, hey, Dad, there you are, not look down and say, wish you could be playing with me, Dad, but you can't. So it's all of those experiences through those years that said Game Time does inclusion the best. I experienced it in 2012. They're speaking my same language. It's time to elevate what they've been doing for the last 100 years and move into the 21st century.
That's so cool. And so, all right. So when you're trying to, this is obviously we're on live stream right now. So some people who are watching can see us,
Yeah.
but most people listening are exactly listening. So how do you paint the picture of like, what does a universally accessible park look like? Like what should people wrap their head around? Like when you look at a
Right.
playground, what are the features that are different than a traditional playground?
Well, let's talk about a couple of those. So it's not just the playground, right?
Yep.
So let me give everybody that visual. 18-acre park from baseball fields to forestry. We're building the first ever universal baseball field. Never been designed before. It's going to work for wheelchair softball, wheelchair baseball, wheelchair lacrosse, wheelchair football, Miracle League baseball. Will work for the typical standing player to be able to use a larger field than what we're familiar with Miracle League. That will lead into a fully inclusive, what we call universal clubhouse. It'll have therapy pockets. It'll have fitness pockets, play pockets. It'll have the most inclusive playground you've ever seen. But then we've actually created the first ever wheelchair slide is going to be here.
Yeah. So I read that. What does that look like?
We're close to what it looks like. It looks like
Okay.
different models. We've tested it with marbles and things to see how it will roll and how it will play. We're actually in that space of calling it a wheelchair shoot. But what I challenged Game Time on was kids who are wheelchair users or people who are ambulatory on crutches, or with a walker, et cetera. They go up and down ramps all day long every day. Perception is reality, right? If you make the ramp look like a slide, especially to the kid, it's a slide. Like, let's just start there with that concept. And they were like, oh, that's a great idea. Yes. And so we've created this, what we're calling a wheelchair chute, which will kind of have a down, a slow, a down again, and maybe be buried into the ground a little bit to slow you down at the end. One of the things I said to them is the number one cause of broken arms for kids are monkey bars. But we don't stop We don't stop making monkey bars. So like give these kids and their families the decision to determine to be risky and adventurous or not. Let them make those same choices. So wheelchair slide it is, right?
There you go.
Let's get them up to 8 feet. Let's get them up to 12 feet, just like we do the other kids. Let's not just give them 2 to 4 feet off the ground. Let's get outside of the box and give them the opportunity to choose adventure and danger, just like their able-bodied peers do. So then that's the playground. Now let's bounce into the fact that we have a special needs only playground is what we're calling it right now. It's not a great name. I'm going to come up with something better.
Yeah.
The concept there was we actually had parents tell us with kids with pretty severe disabilities, we don't go to inclusive playgrounds. I was like, whoa, what do you mean you don't go to inclusive playgrounds? They're like, well, they're usually the newest. People think they're the coolest. And so they become overused and it's too dangerous for my kid to go to. And I was like, whoa, we got to fix that. So we're creating that space, a space that where just play is different, how it's managed is different, how it's supervised is different, and give an opportunity. Playgrounds are designed with like a 2 to 5 mentality and a 7 to 12 mentality. So 2 to 5 is lower ground elements. So this is what I keep saying to people. My kids are all 3 able-bodied, rambunctious, crazy boys, super adventurous.
Okay.
My oldest is going to do a flip off the top of the slide, a double backflip kind of thing. That's them.
Okay.
So this area,
boy energy.
Yeah, this area wouldn't even entertain them, right? So they won't even go there anyway because it's not something that's going to keep their entertainment and desire for adventure and play. So the play is naturally going to become a little bit more sedated, if you will. So that's that area. Now we're adding also family fitness area, think like ninja course. And then you get into the forestry. And what we've said is everybody deserves to hug a tree. We can't talk about how great the trees are. And if you can't get to the trees don't exist. So there'll be pathways throughout the entirety of the acreage of the forestry of the park. There's about 2/3 of the 18 acres in the park. And then finally, I'll close that vision for everybody with, there's a great space we call mental health valley or sensory escape. By the time you get down into this little downhill slope on Wisconsin Avenue where there's a lot of traffic, you can hear all the cars, all the outside noise goes away and all you hear are the birds. It's actually beautiful.
Which is saying something because Tosa is not a rural area.
Right. Right. So we're really, I mean, that's what the Milwaukee County parks love, right? They love their nature. They love their historic trees, in this concrete jungle, and as they should. But again, if you can't get to those trees, it means nothing to me, right? So giving that access into that nature is super important. We already know from studies that parks and nature are good for mental health. So we're just making sure everybody has access to all.
Absolutely. Damian, since we got a late start, can you stick around through the break and answer a couple
Yeah,
more questions on the other side?
yeah.
Great. Our guest, perfect. Our guest is Damian Buchman, who is the founder and executive director of the Ability Center and is also the spearheaded brainchild behind the new Moss Universal Park in Wauwatosa. He'll still be with us on the other side of the break. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. We got Greg Bach on the board, and we are talking to Damian Buchman, who is the founder and executive director of the Ability Center, and also the man behind Moss Universal Park in Wauwatosa, which is going to be the first universally accessible park in Wisconsin, but also maybe the nation?
Hands down the nation. Never even been thought of before. Again, working with Game Time, 100-year-old company, develops 2,000 parks a year, has never seen a fully universally inclusive park.
So this is really exciting because it's potentially the blueprint that could be replicated across state, across country, as far as like what this could look like and how it's adopted.
Yeah. I mean, Kristen, that's our goal. That's our focus. So Game Time and I are thinking big because people with disabilities and communities of all kinds of abilities deserve it. And so we're thinking, how do we socialize and create a plan for 35 universal parks in 35 markets by the 35th anniversary of the ADA? That's in 2 years. Doesn't mean we'll have built 35. It means what's our plan to get there? What's our plan to work with communities to create more? So we fully are committed to and expecting that Wisconsin is going to lead the way for what universal inclusion looks like. This will be the template, as you said. And how do we deliver that across the country?
And one of the things, and I would be interested to know if how much of this is part of it or if it's a positive externality. But I was reading, you probably don't know because you're on the StreamYard, but I'm 8 months pregnant. And so I get lots of advertising of things to get for baby.
Right.
And most recently I saw something as far as like books, like children's books that also introduce disability to your able-bodied children, right? So it's like I have an uncle with Down syndrome. I have cousins who are in wheelchairs. So it's like the access to that when you're a child and you have people in your life, there's just a layer of understanding, empathy. But if you don't, you don't. And so is there also an ability, like part of this is an opportunity for children to be at a playground or to be at a park with a variety of like a diverse group of adults and kids? Is that also part of this? Is what it opens up for all kids?
Absolutely, Kristen, and abilities, and not just kids, adults and grandparents and all ages, everybody. I mean, a community is built of all abilities. And there's something that we say all the time, which we all simply belong to one demographic, and we call that TABS, which stands for temporarily able-bodied. So whether it's disease, which I learned at 13 years old when I was diagnosed with childhood cancer, or it's accident or the aging process, none of us can escape the need for greater access in our future.
Yep,
we're going to need it. And what's beautiful about this is it's not just a playground in a random location. It's an 18-acre park that is also, again, baseball fields, typical softball field, typical baseball field next to the universal field. That is our vision. That is our mission. It always has been for people to play together. So now I can really see what people's abilities are. I can look at somebody and say, well, holy crap, they can crack a home run in a wheelchair and I can crack a home run standing up. Like, what's the difference? Let me hop in a wheelchair, try on a different pair of shoes, as we say, and see if I can do that. Now we can just recognize what people's abilities are, what their functional capacities are, instead of their disabilities. And listen, I don't know what the extra gene is in Down syndrome, but it's full of love. If I can get those hugs along, if I can get those hugs and I can bring those to people, I'm in. I remember being at Children's Hospital and there to get an x-ray, and there was a teenage boy with Down syndrome who came and just gave me this huge hug. And his mom said, "I'm so sorry. He doesn't even understand his own strength." And I was like, don't ever apologize for your child. That's the best x-ray visit in the waiting room I've ever had in my 20 years here at Children's Hospital.
That is the truth. I've been around a fair amount of people with Down syndrome in my life, and they are
It's like an extra
just
love gene, isn't
oh
it?
my gosh.
It's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes. It's amazing. So quickly, I will also, because we have referenced you're the executive director and founder of the Ability Center. We've talked about Game Time, but what is the Ability Center?
Yeah, so I started this organization and this charity back in 2008. Again, I survived childhood cancer in both of my legs when I was 13 and 14. To date, really the only known survivor of my diagnosis, still standing on my own 2 feet. Nobody expected me to see my 16th
Wow.
birthday, yet alone I'm 45 now and celebrated 30 years of survivorship. And actually next month, I'm going to have my 29th knee replacement and revision. So I've grown up. I've grown up expecting to be a bilateral above knee amputee by now. And so that's been the motivation for my honoring my survivorship to give back. And what I found is that what we do often with people with disabilities is it's always like, as I put in air quotes, disability hour. Like, this is the time that we've set aside for you to bring your individual with a disability to do
Yeah.
the thing. It's never like, how are we playing together? And why aren't we playing at the same time in the same locations whenever it is that you're open versus the hour you're giving us? And so everything that we do attempts to create that. And that's what the beauty is in a universal park. You know, people have asked us, like, are people gonna have to pay an admission to get in here? I'm like, no, this is just gonna be a community park as it's been, but now it's gonna work for everybody. And if it's noon on Friday and I wanna go play in the park, you can come play in the park, just like everybody else. Like, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create the Ability Center to make Greater Milwaukee the most universally inclusive recreation destination in the world. That's our goal.
Well, this is awesome. This is a great way to end a Friday show, is talking about this and what you guys are doing with the Moss Universal Park in Wauwatosa. We only got like about a minute left before we got to let you
Yeah,
go. So what is the timeline? When can people expect this to
love
be
it.
something that they can go enjoy?
Great question. Look, we're 50% of the way to our fundraising goal already, thanks to Moss and other donors. We've raised almost $5 million already. We got about another $5 million to go. But that allows us to complete phase one. So phase one is going to be open by fall of next year. We actually start
Wow.
construction in March of 2024. Phase two will open in 2025, primarily because we have to biofeed the trees and get the forestry ready to be under construction. But again, we're just giving access to that forestry. It's not like we're cutting down trees and taking things away. We're just putting in paths and some play pockets and fitness pockets throughout to engage people into the woods. So that'll open in 25.
All right. Well, if people are motivated to donate, can they do that?
Oh, I sure hope they would. You can go to,
Where should they go?
you can actually go to universalpark.org. We've got that as a whole. So
Easy.
it is universalpark.org. Go check it out. You'll be updated on information. You'll see what's going on. You'll check out the blueprints, and if you're engaged, and inspired to donate or to become a fundraiser, it's all there for you.
Wonderful. And we will put all of that in our show notes for today. Damian Buchman, thank you so much for joining us. This was such an uplifting way to end the week.
Kristen, happy Friday.
Friday. All right. Well, thank you to everyone who texted and called in for today's show. Thank you to our guests, Damian Buchman, CJ Safer, and William Walter. Have a great weekend, and we will do this all over again on Monday.
Bye-bye.